my age, being a Vietnam veteran and all that, it was easy to get, you know. But I struggled with it for years. I mean, and I've been a recreational user for a long time, but to take that step to make myself a marijuana user, to actually benefit from medicine versus using it as an excuse to get high, that took a long time. I do that. I finally did it because as a plumber, it broke my I had pains now that I never did before. But there is a lot of abuse. When you look at the Bible and you look at it deeper, you study it, you're going to have a hard time finding that marijuana is bad. Or that the Bible actually says it's bad. But the Bible always says that use is bad. And you're going to be able to tolerate that idea. It's like, go out there and drink a little bit. It's not bad. Don't go home and beat your wife. You know, go out there and get high. But don't. And the thing about getting high is there is no fatal dose of marijuana. You can sit there, I can sit there and smoke all day long the strongest marijuana available, which is called heat, which is like a powder that's left over when you're not even up. You will not, the most you're going to do is fall asleep. If I drink this, what I'm drinking right now, which is a single malt scotch, I have 3 vitamins, I could die. If I have 3 fentanyls, I'm going to die. So there's a difference between the levels of what's going on. Call your representatives. You know, we need regulation. It's an open loop right now. I want. Sorry.
So, my dad has Crohn's disease, and he's in a non-medical marijuana state. That's kind of what got me active in this thing politically. And in my research, I found that this plant is good for a lot of autoimmune diseases like Crohn's, like arthritis, like MS. And recent studies showing that cannabinoids slow the progression of MS. And what I've been pondering lately is the immorality of repressing access to a medicine like this to people like my father in Minnesota, whose legislature passed a medical marijuana law which was vetoed by their governor. So one man standing behind hundreds, tens of thousands at least, people in a state who could benefit from this medicine.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because that's something I thought about quite a bit as well, is the immorality on the other side. And what I discovered, again, this doesn't really make a difference if the Bible says no, then it says no. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what I found is that it's a much deeper question as to how we get it to the point of being a medication. The FDA won't evaluate it. So the FDA won't evaluate it, then because drug companies won't bring it to their attention because it can't be patented, it can't be synthesized. So you have a non-synthetic plant that the FDA won't evaluate, which means that the doctors can't prescribe it, which means pharmacies can't carry it. And it all comes down to this. So, you know, that's, I think, a good point when you talk about the morality aspect of the other side of the equation, is that when it comes down to greed, that greed may play a role in the fact that this isn't legitimate. You know, and that's just as immoral as it might be to put yourself in this state of outside of sobriety.
There is a synthetic THC available as a prescription drug, and it's, in most cases, doesn't work. That's because of the complexity of the plant and all the chemicals that are in the plant working together. That's something we don't completely understand.
Yeah, my aunt was on Marinol for bone cancer, and she's dead now. She died. Otherwise she would be dead. She started with Marinol and ended up switching to using straight marijuana. She was a Christian, and she was in a state where marijuana was illegal. California. She obviously died a while ago. So that was an interesting, struggle for her as well. But I think it does bring up the point of the fact that marijuana is illegal on several different levels. Number one, it's illegal for social use, period. Right? Except for recreation. It's legal, it's still illegal in the state. It's it's only legal based on the city ordinance. It's also against federal law, so to use the district. Now, I don't know how many of you have seen the memo from the Department of Justice stating that we don't care, we ain't gonna touch it. Basically, is what it says. You're following state law, that's fine. So I'll throw this out to the Christians in the room. Who's Caesar? Who is it that we're supposed to be in submission to? We have a federal law that says marijuana is legal, period. We have a state law that says it's okay for medical use. Then we have Breckenridge, which is doing its own thing over there, saying, no, just go ahead and use it. So would it be okay as a Christian if I went to Breckenridge to smoke pot socially? Where's the line?
Another question is whether the federal ban is even constitutional.
Yeah, that makes the doctors leery about signing you up for it because they don't want to be...
Schedule 1, they can't. They can only recommend based on their First Amendment rights. But that goes into that whole circle again of evaluation and money and greed. The question of the federal law being constitutional, I don't think plays a role in what we're saying here. And that's that the fact of the matter is it's against federal law. So where do we, from a Christian worldview, look at that? Do we ignore it because they're not enforcing their own laws, even for medical purposes?
Well, do we ignore it because it's unjust?
Is there a higher law?
Natural law.
God's law.
And that's the point I was thinking about. I assume the passage you're thinking about is render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, render unto God what is God's.
Amongst others, but yeah, that's true.
Yeah, amongst others. And I know you pose this question to Christians, and I'm not one.
Drunk existentialist.
Yeah.
By definition, that's how he introduced himself. So.
Although you guys are drunk existentials,
Or you can
how cool
call
is
him
that?
Ryan.
Yeah, drunken existential. Anyway,
Sorry, drunk anyway. So drunk.
but I think, I mean, like with that passage in the Bible, as always brought across to me, is the difference between what's legal and what's moral. And I think that's the real question. I mean, do you follow the laws or do you follow what is moral? And I think that's of great relevance here, because there could be a great difference between what is legal and what is moral.
Right. Well, certainly we would bring that into play like slavery, for instance. In that circumstance, slavery was the law of the land, but it was Christians that were adamantly against it, and which eventually changed the law because they felt that God's law was higher than the law of the land. I personally have a real difficult time thinking that using marijuana over some other drug that is legal and can be prescribed fits into play. Now, I may be wrong. You guys can call me an idiot if you want. It's not the first time. Ryan's called me an idiot. So, but you go.
Is it possible that the Vicodin that you use that you claim didn't help you personally, maybe that should be outlawed?
But it's not. But yeah,
but what I'm,
sure.
I
hear you.
I had this discussion with my parents 45 years ago, and that has
1960.
that has to do with the fact of, again, the distinction that you're making over there between that which is legal and that which is moral. There can be a wide variance between those two.
Abortion is legal.
Yeah, exactly. So let me just say this. I think when you introduce